You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. Today, we have with us someone who has become a real friend and a friend of AMAC, a true patriot, and former White House staff under George W. Bush, Ken Oliver. And Ken Oliver, he's an expert in public diplomacy in multiple languages, and today he is leading the charge courageously, I might add, to get the truth to the forefront when it comes to protecting the U.S. border. Ken is a dynamic, generous, and a very thoughtful leader, and he serves today as the Senior Director of Engagement and Right on Immigration at the Texas Public Policy Foundation in Washington, D.C. He is a real-time expert on border security and hosted AMAC recently firsthand at a trip down at the southern border where we were able to see what's really happening there. And it is a tragedy that deserves every American's closer focus. So I want to welcome you today with us, Mr. Ken Oliver. Welcome, Ken.
Rebecca, it's great to be with you and all the friends at AMAC, our viewers and listeners.
Well, I just love having you here. You are so close to the border security issue as anyone I know, and you graciously took time to bring AMAC leaders to the border. What an experience that was. I do want to start with some broad questions, Ken, and then we can get more narrow. We saw so many parts of this tragedy really up close, and I think Americans are really beginning to see it in their own towns and cities, from illegal aliens and social burdens that they impose. And almost overnight, right? We see Biden do these midnight drop-offs, and we're witnessing illegal drug trafficking and record number of young Americans dying of foreign drugs. So can you help us see more broadly and put into a broad perspective, how serious is this issue at the border? How important is what we're seeing? And let's start there.
Sure. Well, it's critical. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this issue, which is of critical concern to all Americans. It's of existential concern to our country. We've never before had a situation like we're experiencing this year, where a federal administration neglects to enforce the law, actually incentivizes illegal immigration. It's really a perfect storm because you have really the pull factors of allowing every minor from 150 countries around the world coming in, no application of Title 42, public health, the authority because of the pandemic to restrict people because of the pandemic. That was lifted by President Biden immediately on all minors. So we've had hundreds of thousands of minors coming in with family units. 85% of the family units are being let in. And this, the federal government puts us into debt, right? 20, 30 trillion dollars. It's hard to believe. But the states, many of us have balanced budget requirements. We cannot accept this burden without tremendous impact on our schools, our public health services, our emergency rooms, our jails, our communities. As you saw yourself in Del Rio, people are feeling a real impact in their quality of life and their safety. So it's been a horrible situation for Texas, which is 2/3 practically of the entire southern border. And so Texas certainly has not stood idly by this year. You've seen from day one, you've seen our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, file 6 lawsuits against the Biden administration. He's won several of them right out the bat. One of them was the most insane, just insanity after insanity by the Biden administration, but to create a deportation freeze, to not deport anyone for 100 days. That was the first thing he did. So, of course, that's incentivizing people to come, as they have been by the hundreds of thousands. Ken Paxton did file a lawsuit, and that was upheld. The United States has to deport people. It's had to continue deporting people. Of course, they're not deporting as many as they should be, but they can't just stop all deportations. Deportations, by the way, should be rising. They should not be dropping, but we're seeing them dropping. So it's the exact opposite of what should be happening in our country with practically open borders policies. So we can go, there's so many factors involved, but it's having a tremendous impact. And as you saw yourself, and we met with the Texas state leadership, several generals we met with from the National Guard, we met with Colonel McCraw from the Department of Public Safety of Texas, and how Texas is really stepping up to fill a gap and to provide the deterrence which is necessary. Because if people don't realize that there's consequences to breaking the law, you'll just have more of it, which is what we've been seeing.
It sure is. It really is a national security issue, a public health issue, a safety crisis. They want to almost reinvent the idea of citizenship, the Biden administration, it seems, because we've got no borders at all right now, and they're saying the border is closed. We know that that is not true, and this is going to have this impacts not only our towns and cities. All 50 states are impacted, and of course, I'm concerned also for the electoral process. I want to drill down into some of these specifics. But first, I want to ask you, as you watch all of this unfolding and you see our national leadership sort of either act indifferent or worse, right? They're not really doing, in my opinion, what they should be doing to lead. Do you think, in your opinion, that we're likely to see a continued acceleration of illegal migration, which of course would lead to increased drug and human trafficking, sex trafficking, and crimes? Or do you think that the Biden administration, in your view, will take any responsible measure? I see this as a complete failure, a policy failure. They're just abdicating their responsibilities to enforce laws. Where do you see this in the long run headed?
Well, getting back to what we're doing at Texas Public Policy Foundation, to answer that question, the states are stepping up, not just Texas, but many states are stepping up. There's Governor Abbott is creating an interstate compact, and there are states like Florida and Nebraska and others that are sending National Guard. And the states will have to fill that gap, and they'll have to create and probably create a constitutional crisis, to be honest. There is, of course, the Biden administration is trying to impede the state of Texas to do these things, but the Constitution of the United States protects the states. When the states are invaded, when they face an imminent danger, they can act. And this is going to be testing the constitutional prerogative of the state, which is above federal statute, which is more, that's a core obligation that the states have to protect their citizens from invasion, from imminent danger. So this case of 100, 200,000 people a month coming in across our border into Texas and other border states and throughout the country, that is an invasion. An invasion, you look at this like your home. When somebody comes in without permission to your home, that's a home invasion. It's the same deal. People are coming in not through our door, which is our port of entry, but through in between the ports of entry, which are in Texas, it's over 1,000 miles of border on private property in Texas. And so as you can see, over 125 landowners so far are participating with the state of Texas to have temporary fencing built. This month of December, the Texas border wall project will officially get underway with the groundbreaking. So what you're going to see in a nutshell, Rebecca, is the states beginning to deter and do at some point even turn back people, because that's the only deterrence. I mean, that's the only consequence. When people see that you cannot just get through, there has to be a deterrence to be effective. That's what we saw with the Trump administration, right? Until you had Remain in Mexico, where people who were abusing our asylum system were just flooding in up until May of 2019, when finally in 2019, the Remain in Mexico protocols kicked in, and President Trump, with tough negotiation with Mexico, said you can't just allow people to come up into our country. If they have an asylum claim, they have to wait. And we worked with Mexico, and Mexico cooperated with that. And now, of course, the Biden administration is under a court order to restart Remain in Mexico, which was the single most effective way of stopping the massive abuse of our asylum system, which the Biden administration is simply facilitating.
You are truly an expert, Ken, in this area, and we're so grateful for that, including our 2.4 million AMAC members. We're grateful for these insights because people ought to know the truth. They need to know the truth. I want to turn to a few specific issues one by one. We just learned that more than 100,000, that breaks my heart, 100,000 young Americans died at the hands of illegal drugs last year. Now, that was record breaking, also heartbreaking. And we know that these drugs are coming chiefly from abroad, many over the southwest border. And we know that this tragedy, the loss of young life, is being compounded, if not created, by the lack of focus on law enforcement at the southwest border. And we know that these wonderful dedicated Border Patrol, DEA, and other law enforcement agents are really working to keep up, even as we watch the Biden White House sort of turn a blind eye to these record-breaking increases and loss of young life from illegal drugs. It ought to be addressed. And because the Biden administration is not bringing this out and speaking to it, AMAC feels it's ever important that we do. We want to keep America safe. We want to keep Americans safe. Is it fair for us to say that this increase in young lives lost does rest, at least in part, with the Biden White House?
There's no doubt about it. This is coupled with the illegal immigration. You have the Border Patrol, as we saw repeatedly along the border, they're becoming the welcome patrol. The Biden administration is forcing them to simply process people. They're leaving hundreds of miles of border, sometimes unprotected. They're allowing the drug cartels to manipulate the migrant flows so that the Border Patrol ends up having to deal with these family units, and not while they're dealing with that, then the drug smuggling is taking place. So, and to top it off, the fentanyl seizures have gone through the roof this year. The overdoses, as you mentioned, over 100,000 young people. So this shows you the lawlessness, and that the drug cartels are being empowered. They have control over the border more than our own country does, and that's what is an imminent danger to our country, and which requires a response.
It sure does. Ken, how many are we actually seeing? How many are we really seeing? How many young people are we seeing coming over versus, let's say, single men? And do you think that it's about economics, human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking? Or do you think that, in your view, the Biden White House is motivated to let these people come over so that they maybe have some more control over the electoral process, or more, does it have something to do with the electoral process? But first, my first question was the numbers, because I think there isn't a lot being spoken about the numbers of people. We're not hearing a lot about that in mainstream news.
Right. So the top line is 1.6 million apprehensions this year at the southwest border. We've never had that. That's a record. And we haven't seen that since, even close to that, since the Clinton years. 2000 was the last time. And that was mostly, back then it was a different world. It was mostly Mexican, 90% Mexican single males, very easy to deport. This time we have a tremendous increase in, the biggest increase is people who are not from Mexico, not from Central America, all over the world, Haiti, Brazil, Venezuela. We've had suspected and people on the known and suspected terrorist list coming in, 10 to 20, that we don't know exact number because the Biden administration refuses to release that number. But we have also more than 400,000 gotaways. These are the people that Border Patrol didn't apprehend, but could see that they got through, and they're just escaping into the country, into the interior of the country. And thankfully, the Texas Department of Public Safety is catching tens of thousands of these gotaways. And we saw how that process is ramping up. So, so the Border Patrol may be missing some, but Texas Department of Public Safety and National Guard are catching and putting into jail, especially the singles men, who are the most easy to deal with in terms of detaining. The asylum abuse problem is, again, it's a record nonstop problem that the Biden administration is facilitating by encouraging young people and families to come up here, including by the ridiculous idea of settling cases for $450,000 per family separation, when no other crime in the United States, you don't, if you're convicted of a crime, you're going to be separated from your minor, but you're responsible for that. It's just a really difficult situation in terms of the numbers becoming really out of control. The Border Patrol, as we saw, they're overwhelmed, and so the states are stepping up.
And, this is not a Republican thing, a Democrat thing, an independent thing. It doesn't matter, who you are. This is a problem that I think anybody who really looks at what's happening can't deny that this is not good. It's not good for the folks that are coming over, in my opinion, because if this is the way we want to handle things, then there ought to be a really smooth process with the full support of the Biden administration, with a real vetting process in order to keep Americans safe. You've got these folks coming over that are not tested, yet Americans are being, or given a jab, but Americans are being made to feel like second-class citizens if they don't go along with the vaccination. These families that are suffering along the border, that have lived there for decades, for generations, that are now put in positions that no family in America should ever have to worry about going to sleep at night, and who might be surrounding their home. And then we see children, young adults, and even adult people that are dying unknowingly because they think that they're taking an OxyContin, and they're getting it off the street, and they're finding out that it is in fact laced with these killing drugs that are just taking lives, all of which this is being ignored. And it's mind-boggling. So I'm so happy that you're out here speaking the truth with us, because people need to understand the real facts and speak with their friends and family. This is not an issue that any of us can afford to ignore. And I love that you have this great, unique perspective of having worked at the national level in the White House under George W. Bush, and also at the state level. And you have seen this tragedy really up close at the border itself. And many of our members and many, I think, Americans have never had these kinds of experiences or have seen this before. So your perspective leads me to another question. With your White House background, can you help us understand maybe in a far-sighted way, what are some of the solutions? What do those solutions involve? And what do you think a real caring, thoughtful, and effective president and vice president would be doing right now to get these things right?
Right. Well, one would be to restore the migrant protection protocols with Mexico to stop the asylum abuse, Rebecca. Two would be to continue the modern border wall construction, which all experts in border security agree is necessary and was very effective, has been effective, but we have tremendous gaps that were never done, right, in Texas. A third would be just to fill in these loopholes, to take care of these loopholes in our laws, which allow minors to come in where we can't hold them and we have to release them. So that's really an incentive for minors to come in. We have to stop that abuse of the asylum system. This is the Flores Agreement, for example. The Flores Settlement Agreement needs to be superseded by federal law, which requires people in 100 days. Let's detain people. If they have a legitimate case, they'll be willing to stay in detention, but you can't just release people. The biggest problem has been the return of catch and release. And that just gives people exactly what they're looking for, no consequences. And they're getting into an asylum system, which is flooded with hundreds of thousands of cases in backlog. And then the Biden administration says they will not separate children from parents. So if a parent has broken the immigration laws of the United States, but they have children with them, the Biden administration refuses to deport those parents. So it's a never-ending cycle until people with their heads on straight are again in control and elected by the American people. And we are seeing that, right? These policies, Rebecca, have never enjoyed the support of the American people. In fact, this is the first policy area where from day one, President Biden was underwater and very unpopular on all these policies he's been doing on immigration and border security, or lack of it. So the American people and the polls clearly show not only Republicans, independents are solidly against these policies, which is chaos, creating chaos and hardship for so many people, and damage to our fiscal sustainability as a country, our cohesion as a country, and our sovereignty as a country. So even Democrats, the polling numbers are not good among Democrats, and we're seeing that in Texas. As you know, we've seen swings. We've seen elected officials in Texas recently switching parties We've seen mayorships in McAllen, one of our big border cities, change from Democrat to Republican. So we are seeing people who have their head on straight are saying these policies are bad for our community and for our country, and we will not support the elected officials who have been pushing them. And they will have consequences if they continue to push them next year in 2022.
Yeah, that sort of leads me to my next question, because I do think that people, really see how high the stakes are here. Do you think that there's genuine hope in 2022 and 2024 and beyond, that we can really turn this around? And in your opinion, how important is the 2022 and 2024 election cycles as it relates to our open border?
Well, it's very important because the states are going to do what they can, and we're going to see in 2022 a lot of effort by Texas to deter this flow into the state. But at the end of the day, immigration policy was moving in the right direction just a year ago. In 2020, under President Trump, things were getting much better, and we were moving towards operational security of our border. We were also moving towards doing the technology we need, which the many Democrats say they support technology, but they have not allowed that technology to be used at our ports of entry and throughout our border to detect illegal entry and the drugs that we were talking about earlier. So I believe that this issue will continue to move Americans as it did in 2016, as unfortunately it didn't do in 2020, but is increasingly doing in 2021 and 2022 and beyond. So I think even in this recent Virginia race, this was an issue that came up, and people realize that these policies are affecting them at the local level. The states do not print money. We have real impacts on our health services, on our public education system, by people coming in to those systems who are causing financial real tax burdens on our communities.
Ken, you did touch on this also earlier, just a few moments ago. The foreign nationals beyond Mexico, Central and South America, do you see them really taking advantage of these open borders now and up until something, is done? Is that what we're seeing? We're seeing those numbers increase because they see this opportunity now and they're jumping on it. Is that right?
Right. It's such a disservice to our Border Patrol when they have such a critical job to look for those, especially individuals from countries where there is terrorism and which are a threat to the United States. We just had what happened in Afghanistan. Thousands of people coming in that we are losing track of. That, like I mentioned before, we had 400,000 gotaways. We don't know who they are. So there's a national security risk that is tremendous, that God forbid, but if there is a terrorist act as a result of this open border policy, the American people will know who to blame for it. And the results will be very clear, because this is a very, there's just no sense to what's going on right now with the Biden administration policy in allowing such a collapse of our national sovereignty at the southern border of the United States. We have control at our airports, but for some reason they allowed the southern border to be unprotected.
It is mind-boggling, and I think it's easy for people to sort of almost be in a position of denial when it's so crazy to imagine that the administration knows what's going on, because you and I know that they know what's going on, but they don't care to know the details or do anything to fix it. And so American people need to do that, because we get to vote our president in office. We get to vote those people in Congress, and we need to know this is of major importance. I'm concerned as a mother. I have children. Every mother, every father in our nation should care. This is a real issue. It's a real problem. And it makes absolutely no sense. I said earlier, in my opinion, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were truly compassionate, and this was all based on compassion, then they would be putting a lot of resources behind the brave men and women that are holding the line as best they can to help protect American citizens. What do you think the morale is, the overall morale is with the folks, DPS, Border Patrol, National Security, all of that,
Well, it's
National
interesting,
Guard?
Rebecca, you met Rodney Scott, the former chief of the United States Border Patrol. He's joined the Texas Public Policy Foundation in the last 2 months
Wonderful.
as our senior distinguished fellow in border security. So Rodney can testify to the low morale among the professionals in border security who are not being allowed to do their job, whose hands are tied, who have a president who will criticize them for doing their job, and a vice president. And it's part of a very demoralizing situation among ICE officers as well. ICE officers are not being allowed to do their job, to enforce lawful deportation orders after people have gone through due process. We have hundreds of thousands of people who are in line to be deported. They've received their day in court and they're not being deported. And on the other hand, at the state level, as we can see, the morale is high. The Texas Department of Public Safety, the National Guard, the morale is high. They know that they're doing an important job to interdict drugs, to stop especially the singles who are in camouflage sometime. There are thousands of criminals they're catching. They're catching thousands of pounds of drugs. So, the morale is high at the state level and it's collapsing at the federal level.
Yeah. This is serious stuff. Well, thank you so much, Ken, because this unique perspective really is important that we see. And we appreciate your commitment, both at the state and national level. It's so obvious. Any parting thoughts or parting words that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, Rebecca, we're so thankful that you and Amac are part of the Border Security Coalition, which the Texas Public Policy Foundation has you, it has Rodney Scott, it has Ken Cuccinelli, Tom Holman, Mark Morgan, many well-known experts in border security, people who are fighting human trafficking, which is the modern day slavery, which so many of these migrants get caught up in. They go into debt to make this trek into the United States. And the only way they can pay that debt is by working at practically indentured servitude, sex trafficking, labor trafficking. So it's a really bad deal. It's totally inhumane. President Biden said he would make this system humane. It's absolutely not. People are dying. Hundreds of bodies are being found on our ranches as never before. So this border security coalition we've created is we have a consensus among thoughtful leaders at the national level that we have to secure our border once and for all and go from there. We have to finally establish operational control of our southern border before we do anything else on immigration, which we need to update our system. But
Sure.
the first order of business is control the southern border. So thank you for your work on this issue. I know you continue, and you have a great group of people among AMAC members in Texas who are helping as well.
Well, we are, feel really honored to be a part of it, because that's what our members want us to do. They want us to do whatever it is that we can do as an organization with the voice of our 2 million members to say, hey, wait a minute, enough is enough. This is serious stuff. People are dying. People are being human trafficked. Illegal drugs pouring into our country. Illegals that are seeing benefits that struggling Americans don't see. The whole thing is upside down and backwards, and every American needs to know this. This is not about us trying to attack anybody else or their character. It's rather just speaking the truth. And that's exactly what we're doing, is speaking the truth. So I appreciate your generosity and that of the foundation, and really helping to inform us of the depth of the problem and the nature of the solutions, because the solutions are really what we're praying for. I know that you are a big part of coming up with these great solutions, and I see the work that you folks are doing. So we're all very grateful for you, Ken. Thank you, and for your group and for your foundation. Thank you. And at this time, I think we're all so grateful, because this is just a beautiful time of year. It's a time of hope. And during this time, I can't help but recognize all of the really good, fine leaders that we have. So thanks to the foundation and for the efforts that you have made to help us uphold the law and our nation's core values. And I want to thank everybody. Thank you. And to everyone out there listening to us, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please be sure to share this podcast. People need to know what's going on. For more information, go to our website, amac.us. Each and every day, almost every day, certainly 3 to 4 times a week, we are updating you with more information on what's happening at the border. And we will be speaking with Ken soon. I'd love to have you back soon, Ken.
Sure, we'll be glad to. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And for those listening, if you haven't downloaded the AMAC News app, you ought to do so. You're missing out because you can watch, you can listen to this podcast. You can track breaking news that you won't find in mainstream media. There's no cost. AMAC News app right on your smartphone. Go ahead and download that and make sure to hit the subscribe button, follow, like, and share this wherever you are on social media. Until next time, everyone, I am Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Until next time, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.